Niladri, what time we are going on live? Is it live now?
Yeah, now live.
Yeah, live.
Great. Maybe we'll just wait for another 2 minutes to start.
Yeah, we'll start at 3:30.
Yeah. So we have Mr. Sachin Darap also who is joining. Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hope I'm audible, Karan.
Yes, sir, you are audible. We have 2 more minutes to.
Yeah.
Go.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 3:30, so we can start. Dear all, welcome to the licenses webinar today. We are glad to host you on this exciting event. I am Prakash Rajan, representing the industry leadership at Marsh India. Our endeavor at Marsh India is to offer best risk management and insurance solutions customized to the life sciences industry. As you all know, life sciences industry continued to be agile and resilient during the pandemic. With the development of vaccines and generics at an unparalleled scale and pace, this sector holds prominent hope to tide over the pandemic. With this inspiration, we present to you today our webinar based on Perception versus Preparedness. Today, we will touch many critical aspects of the life sciences industry, like business continuity planning, supply chain resilience, digitization, automation, governance, etc. It's my honor and privilege to introduce our speaker panels today. We have many eminent speakers. To start with, I'll introduce Mr. Rajesh Bharat, Managing Director, South Asia for Colorcon Asia. He brings us 27 years of rich pharma experience. He has worked in Dabur, Knoll before. Mr. Rajesh has seen many aspects of life sciences industry, from technical, regulatory, business, and strategy. I'm sure the audiences will be benefited from Mr. Rajesh's knowledge. We also have Mr. Sachin Darap, Chief Financial Officer, Erosion Life Sciences. He also brings us about 25 years of abundant pharma experience, and he has in the past worked with Abbott Piramal. Mr. Sachin has not only been a leader in the finance, but also headed successful sales and marketing activities. We also have Mr. Ujjwal Gupta, Global Insurance and Risk Manager of Lupin Limited. Mr. Ujjwal is also having 7+ years of experience, 5+ years in the risk management space. It's also my pleasure to introduce our internal speakers. Mr. Lim Sexon, BCM and Resilience Service Leader, Strategic Risk Consulting, Marsh Asia. Mr. Graham Riddle, Climate and Sustainability Consulting Leader, Marsh Asia. Inayat Mezwan, Risk Consulting Leader, Marsh Advisory for Marsh India. Sahil Chadda, Senior Vice President, ESG Influencer at Marsh India, and the leader of ESG Influencer at Marsh India. Adarsh Singh, leader for reward category licenses industry, Mercer India, and our licenses industry leader for Marsh India, Karan Daccharan. With this, I will hand over to Karan. Over to you, Karan.
Prakash sir, thank you very much, and a warm welcome to all the participants. We look forward for an exciting understanding and session which will have great key takeaway points. So without wasting much time, I will jump into the topic. First, we have some poll questions just to have some pulse survey. The first poll question is that, do you feel, I'm sorry, yeah, I'll just go back. Do you feel buying a robust insurance program replaces a requirement of risk management? Oh, wow. So we, yes, so that's the poll. We are getting a lot of questions. Let's wait for 20 more seconds. Okay, so we have the results here. 68% of the participants feel no, but 32% feel yes, a robust insurance program can replace a risk requirement for risk management. I think the 32 participants will definitely change their perspective after this seminar and understand the key importance of risk management. So my next question on the screen. Okay, yeah. So my next question on the screen is your organization's risk management practice and insurance buying process are aligned to long-term growth strategy? So basically, are you future ready when it comes to insurance and risk management? We will give 10 more seconds to the poll. Yes. So 32% says no, and 68% says yes, which I feel is honest. 32% people still feel that they are not future ready when it comes to insurance and risk management. I'm sure maybe we'll find some remedies and answers that can you be future ready. So thank you for the honest answers. We have the third poll question coming up. Yeah. Do you feel emerging risk and their outcomes are evolving faster than the methods and tools which measure these risks? I'll give you a data point, friends, before we conduct this poll. In 1975, the S&P 500 companies were having only 17% of their asset which were intangible. Today, the value of the intangible asset is 90%. You can see the velocity in which this risk has changed. Obviously, so whether the risk and emerging outcomes are changing, we need to see. Okay, so great. We still feel that 86% people believe that emerging risks and outcomes are evolving faster than the method. So great. So yes, that risk and their outcomes are faster emerging because of a hyper growth economy in the world. We'll talk about this, but yes, that's true that risk and outcomes are evolving faster than that. So I think we have a good consensus here. Many of them feel risk is moving faster. Many of them feel that they are not future ready. And many of them feel that requirement of risk management is more than the only insurance, which is only a risk transfer tool. So thank you. With this, with this inspiration and this cue, we'll go and dive in our first topic, which is the global risk report. You all know that Marsh World, MMC is part of World Economic Forum. World Economic Forum publishes yearly a book called Global Risk Report. I'm sure many of your client executives or your sales executive must have shared this with you. It comes from something called Global Risk Perception Survey. This perception survey was done with 12,000 plus executives across 7 continents representing various industries. The objective of this risk is to understand how they foresee many of the risks which an organization is facing. So we'll jump into the results. I have just kept it very summarized for a broad understanding. So if you see, the left side says sensibility and the right side says outlook. Sensibility is obviously how they sense. Are they optimistic, positive, worried, concerned? You see 61% of the people are still concerned. Okay, maybe we can safely, or I would say cautiously say, we are starting at the end of pandemic, but still 61% people still say concerned. I'm glad that only 23% are worried. But if you see on the outlook side, more than 41% says it's volatile, which means the trajectories are fractured. The outcomes are still not totally envisaged, which means that we are still at the end of the pandemic. And you will see the next slide will talk about that the after effects of pandemic is taking concern. So the next slide, this is not the top global risk. This is those risks which have evolved faster after COVID-19 pandemic. So if you see the 3 red bars, which talks about societal risk. Okay, the risk is divided into 5 types: economic, environmental, geopolitical, societal, and technology. You can see that any kind of risk can be categorized into these 5 broad buckets. So if you see societal risk, which is erosion of social cohesions, employment of livelihood crisis, and mental health deterioration, it is an after effect of the pandemic, which we see that how when the pandemic is starting to end, people are worried about their livelihood. People are worried about social cohesion. People are worried about mental health deterioration. So this is where we talk about, the evolvement of the risk. You can see the 2 blue bar. That's a good sign, I would say. Climate action failure and extreme weather events, which means the risk perception is coming out of the traditional risk and going towards environmental. So broad messaging, environmental risk, people are looking, planet cannot wait. Second, the scars of COVID are still they're not totally gone. We are seeing end of pandemic, but we are seeing post-pandemic recovery. This is what the world feels across continents. Global overview of executive comparison next 2 years. So, guys, global risk report has got 3 outcomes, 2, 3, and 5 years. We have just kept it for 2 years because the velocity of the risk is changing pretty fast. You can see that the top 10 global risk starts with employment and livelihood. So obviously, after a storm, the remaining people, what they need to do, how they need to feed the family is on the top of their minds. So employment and livelihood remain same. I would like your attention on the 10 point, again, the red color code, which is infectious disease. So as I said, cautiously, that the end of pandemic is near, but it does not mean that it's totally gone. Still, people rate infectious disease as the 10th outcome. The dark blue, which is prolonged economic stagnation and debt crisis, is the second one. Now, if you recall, all the governments across the world, including our government and American government, European governments, came out with large packages, you can say government stimulus to keep the economy going. Obviously, it means that the debt gets accumulated on these kind of activities, and economic stagnation come when government fiscal and revenue deficit increases. So this is what people envisage, that because of overstimulus, the economy can stagnate. The other ones are human and environmental extreme weather and climate action failure. We talk about it, as I just said, that top 3 of the 10 are again due to environmental, which means again the planet cannot wait. And you will be surprised to see that these outcomes in the next 5 years horizon, we see 5 of the top 10 risk talks about environment. So people are extremely becoming conscious about sustainability and climate, which we'll talk later part of our presentation. So this is about the global view of next 2 years. The last point I would like to cover is the digital inequality. We talk about cyber risk and cyber vulnerability, but digital inequality has overtaken cyber risk by 4 points, which means we are seeing digital inequality at 7 and maybe cyber at 11. Digital inequality means obviously access to digitalization across the world. Digitalization will be a big topic for us in the coming 30-35 minutes in the panel discussion, but still a large part of the world is still unequal in digital inequality. So this is the outcome of the global risk perception survey, to give you a high level idea. Now I'll jump to risk resiliency report. So after global risk report, you can see Marsh India does a risk resiliency. To put it in a very simple way, a resilience is, you can say, a further extension of business continuity process. How an organization absorbs negative event and go back to its own feet after a shock or sudden event is the resilience we are talking about. On the right side, you can see some powerful messaging that ERM measures did not enable or anticipate, forecast the right risk. Business continuity planning failed during pandemic. These kind of activities define an organization, that how resilient they are and how diligently they have planned their risk management report. So I'm not going to take much time on it. We have seen this report, but see, there are on the right side, you will see a sphere which talks about top 6 risks, which is recognized by the world: regulatory, emerging tech, geopolitical, cyber, and climate. These are, you can say, established risks. Some of them we have seen it in the global risk report also. See, the earlier global risk report was on a macro level, where we are talking about world at large, but this is on a micro, or I would say at an organization level, which these risks span out. Obviously, a regulatory risk for a pharma company is one of the most important, same as with a cyber or a climate change or environment. So we are going to talk about these 6 risks in next 4-5 minutes, how these risk is going to span out for an organization. So are we really resilient? Can we really measure resiliency is my next slide. Okay, the 4 drivers of the journey to resiliency is anticipation, forecasting, agility, and collaboration. So to put these complex words into simple meanings is obviously anticipating the risk. When you see that the risk is coming, okay, cyber risk is for real because we are playing with a lot of data around. So this is the anticipation of risk. You recognize that the risk sits on the table. Second is forecasting. Forecasting is nothing but connecting the risk to your strategy and modeling it. Okay, so understand, we all know that it's the strategy which defines the risk. Okay, it is not the other way around. So when we talk about pharma megatrends, we're going to talk about it. But see, connecting risk to the strategy is the first point. How your strategy for a business excellence is connecting to your risk, and how are you modeling that risk is something. The next step it is agility. This is all about this seminar. Agility means a gap between perception and preparedness. So if you ask anybody, hey, did you had a cyber attack? You'll say, no, boss, we have the best secure cyber servers or the best IT policy in place. I see 5 out of the 10 times clients say this, but this means you recognize your perception is that, yes, this risk is important, but are you prepared for it? So the gap between the perception and preparedness defines your agility. You feel a particular thing is important, which is the perception. Perception comes from 3 major aspects our global risk report identifies. One is confidence bias. Okay, we are confident that this is not going to happen. Second is prior experience. This is a very powerful thing. We talk about prior experience, totally ignoring a fact that as I just told you, the question also said the risk moves faster than the tools we measure. So prior experience can go stale. And the last one is just not looking at the risk, which is a part of anticipation. So agility is all about this perception versus preparedness. This is about the the central theme of this webinar. The last one is collaboration. I first read in the risk management principle that risk is nobody's problem until it is everybody's problem in the organization. So collaboration is very important. You have to measure a risk and its outcome. Okay, if I am a risk expert, can I measure a cyber risk? Either answer is no. I need to go to the IT expert. I need to go to the IT department and understand that, yes, this is the strategy, this is the risk. Can you measure it? Can you tell me what is the outcome on it? So collaboration is the key towards resilience. This is the last slide which we talk about. I'll just say on the left side, 93% of the people feel regulatory risk is most important in the life sciences business, but only 28% do primary evaluation. Same is with cyber. 9% of the people are prepared with the risk resilient report, but 89% indicate that's very important. So you know what's important. Are we prepared for it? So how do you do that? I'll just show you my tool and then we'll go to the mega trends. Can resiliency be measured? See, resiliency has to be measured in a particular scenario where, physical asset, reputation, supply chain, stock prices, climate, customer control is there. So, if a risk happens, how will it affect or pan out on these things is important, which we need to measure. I'm not going to take much time because this is not the primary topic, but I'll just show you that we talk about most important, important, and least important. So we put them in 3 buckets: most important, important, least important. Then we go to the 4 tool: anticipation, modeling, or agility and collaboration. And we do a comparison with the, with the industry. We understand, we come up with the mean score that, hey, your anticipation is good, but your modeling is not good. Hey, your modeling is good, but your collaboration or measuring across organization board is not good. So this is the risk resiliency diagnostic, which we have done for many organizations. We can do for all our clients and many of our prospects. So yes, resiliency can be measured. Yes, you can be measured on your peers. And yes, we can put the risk into 3 buckets: most important, important, and least important. This is about resiliency, guys. We have covered global risk report and resiliency. This is just what we talk about: risk forecast and stress analysis. Now we will go to mega trends in the life sciences industry. Life sciences industry is at an equilibrium cusp of opportunity and capability. We have, when I talk about life science, I'm talking particularly Indian life sciences industry. It is an opportunity and capability cusp. So, we have the opportunity to serve the world and we have the capabilities to meet that opportunity. Life sciences companies in India are serving 40% of the world generic market, 50% of the vaccination market. These are very powerful too. I feel just like how India is identified with its service and ITS industries, life sciences in next 5 years, India will be identified by its life science industry. I'm a firm believer that life sciences industry will surpass all the other industries, in manufacturing to stand out as a global hub. So with this positive note, we'll jump into the mega trends. I just spoke about, I'll go to the middle level: opportunity and transparency. As I just said, life sciences companies are expanding their portfolio. They are adding more and more product. A typical top 5 life sciences company will have more than 200 generics to offer, maybe 78 to 80 APIs to offer, and it's further expanding. Many of them have some lead in some therapeutic segment, but they are present in many of the therapeutic segment, which is opportunity to gather and a dependability which India defines. So with this, I would say transparency and opportunity. India life sciences companies have brought down the price of most expensive global drug across the world, and especially in the developed market. We know many of the companies which have got down the drug prices by 80 to 90% in the developed market. So this is where the opportunity and the transparency for Indian pharma companies stands. We have multiple portfolio therapeutic segments developed with the best quality. I'll go to merger and acquisition first, and then I'll go to supply chain. Merger and acquisition, as per the latest report, 2020 saw $50 billion by private equity to get invested, and 6% of it, which is $3 billion, got attracted towards pharma industry. Obviously, the margin, the vision, and the capability to expand appoints a lot of merger and acquisition. There's a lot of fund with the global pharma industries, so to get invested in Indian pharma majors. So merger acquisition become a prime, I would say, one of the major strategy item for all the life sciences companies and private equity. So there is a lot of capital. There was a time 15-18 years back, there was a lot of dearth of capital in life sciences. Now they are flush with funds. Capital is no more a challenge with life sciences industry. With this, I'll go to the next item: supply chain and vaccine. Supply chain. When we talk about supply chain, I remember people talk about complex industries like, automotive or aerospace, where, to make an aeroplane, 10,000 parts go. That's the supply chain we are talking about. But Supply chain in pharma industry has become equally important. The transparency of tier 1 and tier 2 visibility, supply chain, pharma companies own to that supply chain. After COVID-19, which has stressed the supply chain of pharma industry, we have seen that Indian pharma companies have done a backward integration, invested in key starting material. Government of India has also enough, prioritize that and given a supply chain a boost. So supply chain remains a big worry item for Indian pharma industry, especially on visibility point of view. We'll ask our experts in the panel discussion. Spend on COVID-19 vaccine. Vaccine is something which is going, as a synonym for life science industry. All the top vaccine player and all top pharma players are eyeing for vaccine. In today's news also, one of the major vaccine players have just announced that they are applying EUA, emergency use authorization, to UN, which will give them access to 70% of the world population. But India has seen 75% of vaccination. Vaccine is the only tool today which can bring back the nation on its feet. And this is supplied by life science industry. Proud moment for the industry. Now, I would just talk about vaccine in the underdeveloped countries. Please remember, vaccine remains a big opportunity for life science industry. 50% of the vaccine I just mentioned is supplied by Indian pharma industries to the world. And COVID-19 vaccine is still not available to more than 6% of the 52 most poorest nation. So vaccine is a big opportunity item for them. And obviously, Indian pharma industries have full capability to deliver it. So automation and data. Automation and data is something which obviously, again, a catching up trend, but nonetheless, it is picking up well. Data, AI, predictive analysis, right from the product spot of, product development to clinical trials have shown effective results. It expedite the efforts, give a run rate, or I would say a success rate by more than 8 to 10%. So automation data is being used everywhere. We have seen major pharma companies using, artificial intelligence, predictive analysis in clinical trials, also data, to predict their subject, I would say demography or other key aspects. Data sensitivity, see, with great opportunity and great efficiency comes great risk also. Obviously, data sensitivity and external threat continue to remain. But yes, automation and data remains important. I have read a couple of, great pharma companies' annual result. They say that they simulate working environment on shop floors. They are going end-to-end in supply chain management with 100% tracking, with a cold chain, automation on total cold chain to see a real-time effect. They are talking about training people in the, automation sector on the shop floor. So automation and data will see one of the major shifts in strategy in supply chain management. We have our experts talking about it in the panel. So quickly, not wasting your time, I will just take 2 more minutes and I'll hand over to Graham, my colleague, who will talk about ESG. So we are talking about, high margin business like high potential API and the load of, A&DA being the highest. We talk about, any industry which matures, goes into high margin business, which is obviously high potential API, complex generic, biosimilar, which gives cost effective to customer, but has better margins and better market for the, the player. So obviously Indian companies are looking into it. We are talking about the patent cliff and highest application by the generic comes from India, 44% from India, which was last year. I just talk about de-risking supply chain and all. I'll just take 2 more points here. The sale of $240 billion patent drug, which will go off the patent cliff in next 4 to 5 years, which means it will be an immediate 15 to 20% growth for Indian pharma industry. Obviously, but it comes again as a great opportunity, comes a great responsibility. Price erosion. We are seeing a lot of price erosion in the developed market. We see, but it has sustained and I would say stabilized, maybe because of the dollar backup, maybe because of, top pharma companies specializing in some lead products, dividing the market kind of a thing. And the last point I would say is Price erosion is also because of availability of capital and low cost of the input material, which pharma companies have agilely adopted. So we have just spoken about supply chain disruption, so we'll not dwell on it. So I just want to give you some credentials of Marsh Asia. Marsh Asia manages 1,131 life sciences client place, more than $200 million in premium. 9 out of top life sciences clients come from Asia. And to give privilege to India, 30% of all these numbers come from India alone. So you can see the effect or the power of India in the Asian economies in life sciences. So with this, I would say the global risk report, risk resiliency and life sciences megatrend is done. And I would go to my next poll question, which is on environmental, sustainability and governance. Which of the following are sustainability focus area for life sciences companies? So once the poll is done, I will ask my colleague Graham to come on the panel to discuss about ESG. Graham is our climate control and sustainability leader for Marsh Asia.
Thanks, Khan. We'll wait a little bit to see the results come in.
Yes, let's wait for the results.
Because I might change everything that I'm going to talk about depending on what the answers come in as.
Absolutely.
Very interesting. Interesting that sourcing of materials is so high versus vulnerability to climate change, where I would say a lot of that access to materials is going to be dependent on how climate change plays out and how resilient some of our supply chains are. But that's really interesting. Thank you, everybody. If we could go on to the next slide. The next one as well. So thanks, Kanan. I think, I've been introduced to start talking about ESG and sustainability and climate change, but to be honest, I think a lot of what we've already discussed in terms of the megatrends impacting the life sciences industry touches on all the factors related to ESG. If we think around a lot of the kind of short-term pressures on societal pressures, societal risks and environmental issues in that 0 to 2 years kind of time horizon as Khan went through, and then a longer term horizon that focus on environmental risks and how they kind of shoot up the list. So we've really been talking about ESG for a while. But the reason why I want to spend some time talking about sustainability with you all today is because, we see it as a real driver for future success, and the ability to manage the volatility associated with ESG drivers is key for all organizations. But I think in particular, the life sciences sector has some really particular exposures, but also some particular opportunities to generate profit from and generate commercial advantage from kind of exploiting some of those drivers for change. And if we look, what we have on the slide here, I've just included, a few stats of what I consider to be both top-down and bottom-up pressures on businesses and drivers for change related to sustainability. And if I look in particular about the kind of top-down pressures, it's really around those investor expectations. There's huge amount of capital that's looking to go into companies that are aligned to ESG frameworks that set up their business to support particular sustainable development goals. There's a huge amount of capital that's on the ground to support growth ambitions. And that goes across insurance capital, it goes across foreign investment and everything. There is a large amount of capital looking to support companies that are aligned to particular SDGs that are, have a framework for ESG that goes beyond just compliance. And I know India is stepping up a lot of its compliance and its regulatory environment in terms of ESG reporting and ratings and all of these types of things. But I think there is still a competitive advantage for companies who go beyond that and look to really own the market in terms of how they position themselves in terms of ESG. The other is the regulatory environment, of course, as well. And I think what we have the responsible business standards that are increasingly becoming critical in India. But if we look at in terms of just carbon emissions and the drive towards net zero, we obviously had Prime Minister Modi's commitments at COP26 around the 2070 commitment for India. And with that, we're looking at 90% of the world's GDP falling under a net zero target for some time in the future. That's going to create a huge shift in capital globally to enable that. And companies who can position themselves as carbon neutral, as net zero, are going to get access to that capital, are going to position themselves to manage the financial risks that are going to emerge from the regulatory environment that is required to hit these net zero targets that countries are committing to. So that's the kind of top-down pressures that kind of set the scene for a lot of businesses in the life sciences sector. The bottom-up pressure, I think, is market demand. We have consumers who want to spend money for companies who are aligned to their own values. Similarly, we have employees who want to work for companies that are aligned to their own values and are willing to kind of trade certain packets of their compensation, their remuneration, to work for companies that are more aligned to their own values. Consumers are willing to pay more. They're also willing to not buy off certain sectors and shift their purchasing power. And that goes across B2B as well. And for the life sciences sector, there's also a large amount of opportunity for innovation, because we're going to see a huge demand for particular sectors. And if I look at agriculture and land use as an example, we just pop back one more point on this. Sorry, I'm obviously going too long on this one slide. Everyone's trying to make me go faster. That opportunity for innovation and supporting some of the decarbonization imperatives is critical. And if we look at agriculture and land use change, there needs to be a massive amount of reduction in the carbon emissions associated with that sector. And the life sciences space, that creates an opportunity for innovation. You can start supporting the side of technological developments that are going to enable that reduction in carbon emissions from some of these really, really critical sectors of the economy that need to shift. So that's my opportunity scene setting element. And if I shift now to the risks, this is the flip side. And there are, on the next slide, a huge amount of risks. Go to the next slide. A huge amount of risks that we need to anticipate as we move towards this. So there's all of those opportunities are going to require a shift in technology and how we're investing in innovation and what technologies we're deploying and how that changes our supply chains. It's also going to increase scrutiny on who we're providing access to healthcare to. What is our policies in that space, and are we creating inequity, or are we kind of raising up different elements of society in how we provide access to medicine, etc. It's also going to create changing disease burdens. Climate change will change chronic diseases, which creates different risks. We might not have the same amount of market access as we previously did. And increasingly frequent and severe extreme weather events are going to change how reliable our supply chains are. And there's some comments further on in this session on supply chain risk management and how we deal with that. And I just want to lay it out, particularly in South Asia, we think of extreme heat and humidity. There's going to be a rapid increase in people who are exposed to extreme heat and all the chronic diseases that come with it. And that is going to change our customer profile. It's going to change opportunity and risk for the business. So if we go to the next slide. Perfect. So it's Friday afternoon. I'm not going to make any big claims on how much detail we're going to get into, but I just want to leave some questions for you to consider as you go into your weekend and maybe on Monday morning start having some conversations with colleagues around what we can really do to prepare for this change and access opportunity and turn risk into opportunity. So consider, based on these drivers for change, what gaps might exist in your policies and procedures, where different risks could lie in your supply chain. Consider what your peers are doing. As I said, this is a competitive advantage associated with acting on ESG and sustainability. So have a look at what your peers are doing. Are they going faster than you? Are you still a leader? Are you middle of the pack? What type of emerging climate-related risks and opportunities might exist? And just at a real fundamental, because I know I'm talking to a lot of risk managers and a lot of insurance buyers, how well do you think some of these issues are factored into your enterprise risk management frameworks and how you go about your day-to-day. Because I can guarantee you that climate change and sustainability is accelerating some of the risks, and you might not have incorporated that yet in your risk frameworks and your risk drivers and your risk consequences. So some questions to think about. Might skip 2 slides. One more, let's go to one more. So I just want to spend a little bit of time here, and happy to speak to anybody offline, but to help you answer some of those questions, Marsh has developed an ESG risk rating tool, which looks at how well you're performing on ESG across a range of issues. It's free to all of our clients. We're welcome to go through this rating process to help you understand what you might be doing well in terms of ESG risk management and what you might not be doing so well, and where you might need to step up in terms of managing the full gamut of risks associated with ESG. And we can then subsequently build it into underwriting and engagements with the markets. But before that, it does really provide some valuable information for your management to understand what your risk profile is right now, but also what you're doing about it and how you can enhance your resilience in terms of this emerging threat. So I'm going to stop talking and pass it back to Khan. Thank you.
So thank you, Graham. We will definitely have more questions around ESG in the obviously during the panel and after that. So our next agenda item is Client's Corner. We have invited our much valued client, Lupin Limited. We have Mr. Ujjwal Gupta, who is the risk manager, global risk manager and insurance manager for Lupin. So we have invited Ujjwal to talk about the risk management practices at Lupin and how they have achieved their risk management goals. So over to Ujjwal. Ujjwal, thank you very much for coming. Over to you.
Thank you, Khan. Thank you for having me here. It's a privilege to be part of this forum. It's good to hear from our peers and Marsh team about the risk and the emerging risk on this pharma industry. See, pharma industry, we deal with products of human consumption. So risk becomes even more eminent to be managed. So at Lupin, we have a very well embedded risk management framework to ensure that we are well placed to manage an adverse effect posted by financial, operational, strategic, or regulatory risk. So what we do is risk is not only perceived through management experience and intuition, but it is also based on the organizational data, whether it's external or internal. So the decision makers analyze many types of data with respect to, with the help of managers to prevent any damage with respect to the emerging events. Also, risk management is a practice which has been embedded at the business units level as well. So we ensure that every employee is part of this exercise. So to illustrate on how we have tied over the pandemic and how our framework, risk management framework, has helped us to manage the risk during pandemic and emerging risks, I'll just illustrate some examples. During pandemic, the two things were at big risk, let's say business and human capital. So we had a strong business continuity plans and SOPs in place so that our plants are up and running 24/7. It was a big challenge at that point of time, and we were able to tide over so that we survive in the market. We had an availability of key raw materials before the lockdown was announced. Transportation alternate transportation was being prepared, and the movement of employees were also restricted and based on SOPs only. So BCPs are critical documents which we relied upon, and it is being updated in a timely manner so that we don't face any kind of a disruption on that side. However, on the employee welfare, we implemented different insurance programs, like we doubled the life insurance for all the employees and took additional Mediclaim policies to cover hospitalization for COVID-19 related illnesses. And also we conducted vaccination programs so that the employee movement can be done within the organization freely and the work doesn't get hampers. So this was an important aspect with respect to pandemic which we came out. However, pandemic gave us a different data as well. If you look after the digital side, we realized that in March 2020 that the products will be now sold and brought on the online platform rather than on the physical side, which was happening before the lockdowns. So we created a different entity, Lupin Digital Health, to come up with a platform where the medical practitioners as well as customers are on place on one platform itself. And we designed a product or a package to help the customers help the customers give a perfect healthcare solutions to them. So we almost put in 100 crores of rupees into it. We appointed McKinsey to on the table, so that we are very well designed on this front. So this is a perspective which I want to give from the pandemic side. However, the framework identified that the customers are moving online to consult doctors and purchase medicines via online platform. This has been discussed. But one more thing I would like to put in, that risk to physical assets. A lot of discussion was there during the pandemic about non-damage BI. That was the most important discussion which happened a lot. However, we are cognizant about the risk to physical assets and various plant locations, and while in logistics department too. So we collaborated with Marsh at our global, they are our global risk management partners, to analyze various impact scenarios, and they provide us with the innovative, cost-effective solutions on safeguarding those assets. And we have been doing this for past 5 years. Because of that, we were able to tide over any kind of a business interruption scenarios during pandemic, as well as on the logistics side. So what happens is, this risk management philosophy, which is embedded in the organization, which is taken seriously at all levels. Our risk management calendar is defined throughout the year. Marsh consultants visits the plant locations, suggest on the measures, risk mitigation measures to be taken, and a strict timelines and budget processes drawn, so that this get fulfilled in a smooth manner within the time frame. The recommendations, I'll tell you, has been very effective, and we did not have any major disruptions from any accidental event or natural calamities in last 5 years. So this is a testimony to the risk management practices which we have followed here. So not only the risk management practices help you bring the drawdowns on, keep down the physical assets damage part, but it also helps you in the insurance program. Marsh has designed a comprehensive insurance solution for assets and liabilities worldwide, with significant savings in insurance, just because of the risk management practices which we have implemented. So this is definitely a great achievement for us, and we were the first company to get the insurance cover for plants at a much lower rates than the GIC. And we are globally associated with Marsh for all subsidiaries who are proactive enough to challenge risk and give an innovative solutions. Our framework has also been able to identify the risk on the regulatory side, which is a very important one. So we designed a management programs and SOPs, and we designed a program called Quality First, which was run for almost 2+ years. The benefit was that 9 of our sites are now US FDA approved, and it happened during the pandemic that even we were ready for inspections online during the pandemics. So this was the testimony of our Quality First program, that regulatory compliance is the most important thing and it needs to be fulfilled. We have received 6 global awards, 1 silver award at Quality Circle Forum of India for various improvement projects implemented at manufacturing sites. Now, when I talk about the emerging risk, Lupin has taken a big leap in managing the emerging risk as well. ESG and climate risk, which has been correctly discussed, is one of the big risks which needs to be challenged and it needs to be corrected. So because of the attention and ESG has received and will continue to receive in the following years from investors, employees, patients, stakeholders, the pharma companies have used their extensive resources and implementation for the effective measures and practices under ESG. So ESG performance can give pharma companies a competitive advantage among the peers and is relevant to how successful a company will be in future. So we have made a conscious effort to migrate to a cleaner fuel substitute such as renewable energy in the form of biomass, solar and wind. We have installed solar plants at plant locations and additionally purchased wind power at 2 of our plant locations. Currently, our renewable energy comprises nearly 12% of our fuel mix, and we are constantly exploring ways to increase the proportion of renewable energy each year. So we understand that the climate change and ESG will be an important part, and we are striving each and every year, and we are targeting that we'll be undertaking 100% detailed ESG audits of tier 1, tier 2 suppliers by 2025. And it was secondly rightly mentioned that technological obsolescence, we are moving towards a digital world, and it's necessary that we are not left behind in terms of technology. So we started an ADAPT program, which is Accelerated Digital and Analytics Performance Transformation Program, to help we achieve our aspirations of creating the plants of futures. By leveraging digital analytics to simplify our day-to-day operations. So this program has helped us to ensure control over production planning, cost planning, demand planning like never before. So we understand that this is the required as of now, that we move towards the digital side. Otherwise, there be a risk of technological obsolescence. However, cyber risk, which we have faced before, and we would say that which is ever evolving, we implemented various IT tools to come out of that cyber incidents. However, because of our strong risk management practice, there was no major effect on our data loss or any third-party liability from the malware attack which we faced in November 2020. So this is something how we have managed risk on various fronts, whether it's emerging side or whether it's on the regulatory side. Because on the regulatory side, there cannot be any tolerance with respect to quality of the products, compliance of the US FDAs. So our risk management framework and philosophy has really helped us to tide over the gray swan events and the pandemic very efficiently. And needless to say, Marsh has played an important role in helping us come out of it and helping us designing the risk mitigation plans, improving our risk mitigation measures, helping us implement them so that we don't face any kind of disruptions in our businesses. And this is a testimony also that we have been awarded by the CNBC India Risk Management Award in 2020 based on our risk management practices under the pharma category. And this is a privilege to be receiving those awards, because it's just signifies how ahead we are in risk management and how we focus on the risk management practice and its importance in the pharma sector.
Thank you, Ujjwal. Thank you. Really, Lupin is one of the top pharma companies. Obviously, you owe to the industry to be, thought leaders and, activity leaders in risk management. So I must say that you gave a detailed account on the client's corner about Lupin's agility to address pandemic, and also work on how you have managed the insurance program. It's a pleasure to have Lupin as a client and to have you on the client's corner. So quickly, I will now jump into panel discussion, our next topic. So I'm going to stop sharing here right now. I'll, though we have some slides, but I will thought we'll have a kind of spotlight. So here, audience, the most awaited session, which is a panel discussion we have. So, we have a very, I would say, a very experienced speaker on panels, Mr. Rajesh Parab and Mr. Sachin Dharab. I will first go to Mr. Rajesh Parab. So we have a, kind of a, I would say, a discussion, or I would say flow, that I'm going to ask the business process continuity report process to Mr. Rajesh, and then I'm going to go to my internal expert. Then I'm going to ask another topic with Mr. Sachin Dharab, and I'm going to go to my internal expert. So, views from industry and views from risk managers will, I'm sure, have a lot of, positive take-home points for our client. So my first question to Mr. Rajesh Parab, sir, looking back at the start of COVID-19 pandemic, this is related to business continuity process, and the pandemic is still spanning out. Still, we are seeing, pandemic not ending. what is your experience or the contingent action you have taken, and what were the top 3 issues or challenges your organization could mitigate with the robust BCP? So, what kind of steps you have taken, one, and what kind of challenges you could mitigate, reduce, or I would say totally remove with a robust BCP, sir. So over to Mr. Rajesh.
Thank you, Karan. Just before I get into answering the specific questions, we have heard this word BCP, BCM multiple times. So just starting with that summary, BCP remains on paper unless it is tested. And as you say, it should be the capability of organizations to sustain their business in all forms, including the people, the premises. Ujjwal has covered all the aspects while he was doing the overview of how Lupin has mitigated all the risk. So that's a good example of how a business continuity management works. Overall, it identifies the potential threats, works on preparing a procedure to prevent them happening, and in case it happens, a recovery mode and what the team needs to know. And it's not a job of one person. It's like when you say when risk happens, it everybody's responsibility. So similarly, the BCP or BCM is everybody's responsibility. And to make it robust, it has to be a very live document. We were working on our BCP for more than 20 years now. It was always there. But during this pandemic, the one thing we saw was an element which was not anticipated to that extent, like happening globally across the all continents at the same time. The typical business continuity plan would have a backup plan to supply the logistics activities to happen. But how do we work when complete country goes into lockdown? Okay, so that came up from the robustness that was built. Our document was a living document. We do it review every year, and involving all the stakeholders and then training them. So if something happens, people don't need to run around. So that helped us during this pandemic to activate and keep our focus. Our focus high level was to keeping our people safe. That was the first challenge for us. Second was to keep the plants running. As you say, when you move into a mode where you'll change your normal systems, like moving to a working from home or digital work, there could be other threats waiting for you. The other disruptions may impact you, and that could lead to failure of the plan. And the third thing was keeping our customers in business. We are part of essential supply chain for all the pharma. So our products are starting materials, or they are used in the critical components for manufacturing pharma, and we supply to the complete South Asia. So the benefit that we had was having our manufacturing close to where our customers are, and we have more than 8 plants across the globe. So they're close to where the pharma hubs are. So that eliminates the dependency on moving material from one place to another. So when we worked and implemented, we could activate our BCP quickly. Since this was a documented plan, which included a lot of business continuity management systems, including the disaster management system. So the SOPs were ready. We just had to make some modifications to cover the pandemic, the procedure of social distancing, making procedures when people are moving, traveling to the office, when they are working in the office, what does this mean by social distance, and create that continuous education through a various channel, a video mechanism, because we cannot have a people gathering in one room. And that helped us to keep our business going, and at the same time working on all our critical components to tick box in our IT infrastructure, the reliability. In fact, even connecting to customers by adopting quickly to the digital platforms available during that time, the MS Teams, Google, whatever we could get, because we have a different set of customers and they all need to be served differently. Working closely with them when they need to have a technical solutions through a video mode. And we kept enhancing based on the learning that we had in each phase, from 2020 till now. I hope that answered your question. Anything missing, please let me know.
Yes, a very powerful point. You utilized your global leverage. You kept your people safe. That's the big messaging. You utilized, the video, and I would say the, internet facility. It's, I must say, it's difficult for a pharma company, unlike a financial services. I'll go to Lim for his view. Lim is our business continuity and resilience leader for Marsh Asia. So over to Lim. So what's your take on the question?
Thank you, Khan, and thank you, Mr. Rajesh. What I'm hearing is actually I'm actually very encouraged because one of the key areas that typically in business continuity is that we're actually focusing a lot on organization resilience, as which is actually a main topic in this today's session. And you actually brought up some important points like human capital. So one of the things is how do you ensure the availability of critical resources and keeping them available to actually keep your operation running. So I think that I agree with that. And one of the challenges in this aspect is that, as you rightfully pointed out, many organizations did not anticipate a lockdown, or some of them, they anticipated a lockdown, they didn't anticipate an extended lockdown. So one of the things is when I work with some of my clients is to, especially in a process of chemical related plants, do they actually have adequate facilities, rest facilities for the resting, the shift on the rest? And then if you actually have good facilities, how about in terms of other supplies like food and with water? So we actually even if you don't have that internal, you actually can, is that nearby? And if there's a nearby facilities that can house them, you actually have transportation. So the other one that I hear from Mr. Rajesh, which I actually agree, is that one of the challenges that in fact COVID-19 actually has brought to the surface is supply chain is not just about your company being a critical supplier to other companies. It's also what about your suppliers, and your suppliers may come from different parts of the world, right? And then the other challenge is that as was mentioned earlier, in pharma you actually have cold chain. Even if you don't have rely so much on cold chain, you rely on raw materials. Those are also part of your good distribution practice. Right, so all these things are actually at the foreplay of in terms of business continuity. And this highlights one very important point is that what I would advise all the participants here is if you have the chance to really look at the impact over time on unavailability of these critical assets or operations. And then the other one that I think Mr. Rajesh did mention is the dependency, not just the internal dependency, the external dependency, review and all this. And one of the things I noticed is that probably not for Mr. Rajesh, but many organizations where actually when they plan, their plan assumes a short-term period of I would say a incident. Like for example, many companies they anticipate a pandemic to last at most 3 months. And here we are today. We are already we already past the second year. We are going to the third year, and then we may go into as Rakan mentioned, we may actually go into an endemic stage. But the thing is that when there's an endemic stage, there could still be a localized regional kind of epidemics. So it goes. It may go on, and in short, every organization, you need to look at your own risk. You need to actually plan your ability to actually respond to that. So in the definition as in the international standard is that resilience is the ability to absorb the impact and the ability to adapt to the new environmental challenges. Right. So thanks. Back to you, Khan.
So thank you, Lim. I'm not going to, though, sir, you answered, Rajesh, sir, you answered a couple of questions. I would say I was very impressed by Lim saying that every organization has to see the risk from their own viewpoint or from their own, glass. So I have only one last question on BCP. We can make it quick, sir, though you have already given view that you guys have totally moved towards video and all. So, sir, with this new normal, I'm a financial services company, IT company. It's easy to say, yeah, it might be effective. Maybe there'll be 50% of the people in the organization say effective, not effective. But in your case, which is a flow company, which is a manufacturing concern, how effective was the new normal, the hybrid work condition, how BCP took care of that? Like, sir, there can be an inconclusive answer to it, but I thought just I'll ask you, how effective was that?
Yeah, this is a good question. For manufacturing setup, I would say it was largely effective, because we can't say 100% we can make products sitting at home. We need people at the site, and we need to take good care of them. So what it helped us by moving the people who can work from home or who can do partial work from home, that comes from prioritizing of upper line in a BCP. So what is the priorities? According to those priorities, we could move people quickly. And then slowly, as we learned, we move them in different batches to come to the work, or distribute them and make them work as and when required. But the core production, the quality, the supplies, and the distribution, they had to be in the plant. But we only ensured how do you keep the number of people moving around when they come in and out very limited, so that we can take good care of them. Also, when they travel, to have them special vehicles where we can maintain below 50% of the capacity, get it quickly, turn around, work in 2 independent shifts with no overlap. It adds to the cost, but the ultimate goal was first primarily to keep them safe and then keep the plants operating. If there was in the first wave, everything was uncertain. You don't know how it spreads and what it will do to you. So not taking a chance, sometimes you may be overdoing it. But this remote working for even office workers was initially difficult. Quickly moving to working from home is not easy in the big cities. You are not prepared. Your house setup is not designed to work in that type of scenario, in terms of broadband connectivity, the backup powers, all sorts of things. So that was learning. We had a good support from our IT. And what worked for Colorcon was over the years, we have moved towards paperless, more digital, and that helped us to have most of our processes can be done remotely. Okay, but we are still working, looking at what skill sets are required to continue to work in this framework, because ultimately the business has limitations when you don't meet our clients face to face, right? So you must be explaining the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. But greatly presented, sir. Yeah, limitations are still there, but how to work around those limitations and get best out of is the best risk management, and I would say organization goal. But thank you very much, sir. We'll come back to you on some digitalization and automation question. Audience, the next hot topic is obviously the supply chain management. So I have Mr. Sachin Dharab on the supply chain management. Sir, my first question to you is, obviously, if you recall, I was starting my question that supply chain is very critical when it comes to life sciences, and there are multi-tier connection. Okay, you make a formulation, you take APIs, and the API guy takes chemical and maybe other intermediaries. So, your visibility on multi-tier connection on supply chain, and how a transparency or key on these key factors can be arranged. So how to make a robust supply chain, sir, with your experience, if you can share, and how to keep a high level of visibility. So over to Mr. Sachin Dharab.
Yeah. So thanks, Karan. Interesting discussion so far, really. And supply chain, of course, is the backbone of any company, and especially in life sciences, because of the regulated environment in which we typically work, it becomes a little more and more critical as we all of us try to overcome these challenges. So I'll talk from 2 angles. One, the life sciences sector, which deals with the patients directly, like Ujjwal was talking, Lupin, like where finally the tablets and injections are directly consumed by the patients. So it becomes really important. And also for the sector in which I'm now working, a CRO CDMO sector, where it's a B2B sector, we don't deal with patients directly, like Rajesh was saying. Like we do end up supplying our products to the pharma companies, which in turn supply to the consumers. And so I'll see the supply chain risk more from the 4 angles, even for us. The first is global dependence. And during the pandemic, we also saw, while there was a risk, but it was also an opportunity, because there are multiple sources which we can open up in this particular area, because people do see opportunity to come up. the stringent regulatory and ESG criteria which our customers are imposing. Like we are suppliers to one of the top leading pharma companies, and yes, the criteria is getting stringent and stringent now also and for future. And finally, your efficiency. And especially from Indian angle, a lot of the suppliers to suppliers like us are in the MSME sector. And really, that was the area which created a lot of risk for us, especially during pandemic, and it will continue to pose that risk. How do we really tackle that? For us, really, the mitigation things on supply chain is, I'll say, a PPP model, not like the PPP what government thinks, but proactive planning and preparedness. So that's what is a model which will definitely work. People do practice that. And that's what something really helps. And we heard from Ujjwala and Rajesh also on the same thing. So really, how do we work on alternate sources, even for regulated products as well as unregulated products? So we don't really fall into regulated because we supply for non-reg markets or API intermediates, and some of the services are really at a pre-discovery stage. But how do we really create an alternative backup? And unfortunately, over the last many years, a lot of dependency has been built over China for most of the Indian pharma companies. And in some of the cases, the APIs and intermediates are completely monopolized with some of the Chinese suppliers. But this was an opportunity forcefully, which everybody had to follow. We have also ended up creating alternative backup sources for them. Some of them are costly, but rather than not getting the material, the costly source always is the better. But the important learning which companies have done, and which is one of the best practices, how do you stay invested with your suppliers? Don't look at the suppliers as a transaction, but look at your suppliers more as a partners. The more your customers are invested in you, and more you are invested in your suppliers, that's what it really makes a difference. And these relationships really helped during this pandemic. Come what may, people didn't look at it like a transaction. They helped, they stood with their customers. And some of our suppliers, despite critical constraints, they stood with us. We were able to stand with our customers in that way. So that looking at suppliers more as partners, investing in them, and be very explicit in your demands to your suppliers, because you can't give anybody a shock that within next 3 months, I want to change some of these parameters and I want you to upgrade. Because for us, it is important. A lot of our suppliers are MSMEs. We have to train them in advance, warn them in advance. We have to remain invested in them. And that's how Indian companies in my previous company we used to do. That's how I have seen we implement similar practices here. And that is one of the effective mitigation which are acted on us. Cost, of course, in the longer term, we have to balance between cost and availability. But in the short term as a mitigation, availability took a precedence on cost in many, many aspects. And in many cases, we were not able to pass it on. Companies were not able to pass it on to the ultimate consumers because of controlled pricing regime. But patient's life was finally the most important thing in this whole supply chain management. And that's how collectively we were able to mitigate it. So I'll strongly recommend this PPP model, and treating the suppliers more as partners, because that actually helps a lot in terms of overall mitigation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. It is really, I think it's a big messaging. Any business for being successful needs their suppliers as partner, more so with pharma industries. But definitely, sir, in the time of COVID-19, not seeing as a transaction, but as a relationship is important. Sir, to this, I'm sure the audience is really enjoying this conversation. Another question, sir. You said you started your dialogue with, I'll come to Inayat after that, because Inayat is our supply chain consultant, because I thought I'll just mix two into one. Sir, you said global dependency is very high. So my next question to you, sir, is, do you see any cyber interference in your supply chain management? Because we feel supply chain is thoroughly automated and real-time tracking exists in pharma. Second thing is, how do you address your environmental and cyber risk? I would say environmental risk you have already addressed by treating your partners, by treating your suppliers as partner. But purely from cyber risk or cyber interference, do you have any input? With that, I will go to Inayat after your inputs.
So cyber, not really that way. I have seen that risk emerging for most of our suppliers. Like for that matter, we are not completely back integrated, but this will be a critical risk like some of the bigger FMCG companies who are end-to-end integrated with their suppliers. Probably it will play out on that, but I have really not seen this. Cyber is a relevant risk for every company. But with effective BCPs, I have not really seen supply chain getting disrupted because of cyber. People are able to mitigate that and continue with the supply. That's what at least I have seen.
No problem, sir. Absolutely. Obviously, that's good to know that cyber is still not a primary risk for supply chain in automation.
Yeah.
But with this, I'll go to Inayat Mizwan. He's our risk advisory leader and specializes in life sciences. And he designed kind of cyber supply chain resilient model. So over to you, Inayat. So what's your take and how you want to go? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Karan. So when I heard your first question, so there are two important words in that. One is the visibility, and second is the transparency. And a lot of time people tend to mix up these two words. They feel that if they know that their supplier, they are transparent, but there is a big difference. So when we talk about visibility, it's a company knowing that what is their upstream and downstream supply chain, knowing their first year or second year, and whereas when we talk about transparency, it is a next step after the visibility, and what Mr. Sachin rightly highlighted, first thing, and then I put it in a different manner, sir. I mean, you have said PPP, but I'll put it in a different manner. So we will start with 4 steps. The first is getting to the who. So when we say who, is basically getting or forming a supply chain visibility, knowing your multi-tier supplier, which Sachin sir has rightly indicated. Now the next is understanding the what. We know our supply chain, but understanding the what. So what is basically is your quantitative assessment. Lot of time what happens is many companies, what they do is they understand their supply chain, and then they also understand that this is one of the key risks. But then have they done the risk quantification? Whether what sort of the impact it can have if that particular chain gets impacted. So a lot of time that quantification part is missed out. So it's very important to do the quantification as well. And third is engage. What again Mr. Sachin rightly highlighted, treat your supplier as a partner. That is very important in this modern world, where you reach out to your supplier, you communicate your expectation. At the same time you also help them for their pain areas. And once we have done that, then what we can do is basically the last part is basically driving improvement, which is basically sharing information. Now this is very critical. So if we start sharing information, and then this is basically the transparency part of it. When you start sharing information, they know what are your expectations, and at the same time it creates a brand image for a company that they are so transparent that it leads to a sort of an informed supply chain. So that is from a visibility and transparency perspective. Now, from the other aspect, what you rightly said is the digitization. Now, what we have seen is when we talk about digitization, and looking at the growing number of exchange point or information data, which is happening from a producer to a logistic to a freight forwarding company to a warehouse distribution, the number of information has become more and more complex. And add to that, if you have a vendor who have a unprotected system and having access to your to a pharma company manufacturing system for data entry, that makes your supply chain more vulnerable. In fact, to give some statistics here, one of the survey which was carried out in 2021 by Black Kite, what they have highlighted is nearly 10% of the pharma manufacturing companies are highly susceptible to a ransomware. Okay, and nearly 12% of the pharma industry vendors are susceptible to ransomware. And one of the most impact segment of those are the mid-sized companies, where they fail to, invest large amount of investment for end protection or cyber security. So, so when we look at the statistics and the hazard, it's obviously, cybersecurity plays a very important role, starting with not only your improving the company's own cybersecurity, but have a framework which can also capture the vendor's cybersecurity. We don't want to go in detail, but at least have some indication on what level of cybersecurity they have. At the same time, once you have that cybersecurity framework, also do a risk quantification. Again, coming back to the risk quantification part, a lot of time what happens is cybersecurity experts feel that we have addressed all the aspect, and then then there is a risk transfer part of it, where a lot of companies take a cyber insurance, but there is a gap between understanding the risk and taking a risk transfer. So cyber risk quantification plays an important role, where Marsh also have done a lot of helps a lot of companies doing a correct risk quantification, which eventually led to taking a proper coverage of the cyber risk. Now, and then finally, when we say about cyber risk transfer, cyber risk insurance, one important thing to be mindful is when you take this cyber risk insurance, should not be limited to only to yourself, but extend it to, if possible, extend it to your supplier. So that makes your entire more resilient in terms of risk management as well.
Thank you, Inayat. Thank you, Sachin sir. Definitely, yes. It might not be relevant now, but it's going to be relevant after 2-3 years. So with this, I have a last question on towards to the panelist. We have, sir, we have I would say, we have a digital and automation session, which we just discussed, that, pharma industry is definitely going digital automation. So I have only, 2 questions around it. I would say I will word it. So, sir, when we talk about AI, machine learning, we talk about industry like pharma, which has been a brick and mortar, disciplined and regimented company. We have seen pharma guys only for 20 years, worked in pharma industry, like you guys, stalwart sitting here. When we talk about this cross-industry innovation like AI, machine learning, or I would say faster delivery, where the talent is going to come from? Like, do you guys develop talent inside, or are you going to hire from outside? So this question is to both Rajesh sir and Sachin sir. Anybody can, take it up as first go. So do you hire talent or you develop? I understand as a managing director, as a CFO, you'll have a high visibility. You don't expect a deep answer, but what do you think? One thing, obviously. Second is that there'll be a deep divide between the hybrid work culture and, with work from home and non-work from home. Rajesh sir told that, there was a, kind of a discussion that there are some priority who will work at the shop floor. There are some priority who will work at home. So how do you balance these two things? Because, as again, I'm telling you, financial sector does not matter, but for pharma, it matters. So over to you, sir. It's like, will Rajesh sir go first?
Sure, Karan. Your question has multiple dimensions, so I will touch one by one. And I'll let Sachin add to that. So as we say, digitalization ecosystem does not mean that it is a disruptive. It's going to get people out of work, but it definitely would complement them. And as machine learning, things like automation and all these error-free working systems are aligned with the concept of a pharma, ensuring the safety, security, efficiency of the product, most importantly, consistency. And when you reduce this manual work, you definitely move towards achieving those goals of zero defects in a way. And as we have now seen, things are changing. Our new generation has different expectations. They don't like to do the repetitive tasks. So why not move that task to more robotics or cobots using this extended digital ecosystem? Digital does not mean only what we hold in hand, like laptops or mobiles. It has got a larger what works behind it, including the networks, the internet, which helps us to work, remotely connect, and I can operate from here. I can see using the cameras what's happening in the plant. And in terms of building resources, pharma is definitely focusing on our core business, but to reduce a dependency, the part of the BCP is to develop their own skills. But to develop own skills, we definitely need to hire experts. You can't suddenly start developing skills internally. We need a blend of people who will come from outside, give us that perspective and subject matter expertise. So I'll keep that very short. The world is still a VUCA world, we call it today's world. So we have to keep adapting.
Yeah, great, so great. Yeah, so Sachin sir, your view, sir.
No, I second what Rajesh said. So typically over the years, we have been also focusing on internal talent, whether when I was selling pharmaceuticals to patients or whether in this current CRO CDMO sector. We don't have that as an in-house breed, which we have developed over the years. And definitely we have to go and look outside. And we need people like who will come and challenge some of these core processes. As Rajesh said, like it need not be disruptive. But many times the benefits of digital everybody realized during this pandemic when people had to shift from work from home, like our core people in manufacturing and laboratories, they had to come because their work can't happen from home. They have to come to the site. While most of the people, other people remain working from home. So how to bridge this gap in terms of communication and in terms of data exchange and in terms of getting these evaluations done. So that was things. So we do hire from external world, and then over a period we'll develop our own bench strength on this, whether it's data, digital roadmap, or whether it's artificial intelligence, because it is one of the important area in our sector also. We are typically into innovation, scientific innovation, lab-based, but artificial intelligence can be one of the disruptors tomorrow. May not be now, but who knows at the speed, it may be 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. So we do intend to build this strength, and it will be from external, because that's how you start.
Yes, thank you, sir. Yes, absolutely.
Allow me a few seconds, I'll add to that.
Yes,
maybe
sir.
not today, but somebody's already thinking of how can we do the manufacturing sitting at home. Maybe robots working, but the production supervisor working from home, controlling the machines. So that may come as the industrial revolution happened.
Yeah.
I remember in our automotive seminar, the Japanese leader for automotive and Sahil was talking about automotive on the robots on the on the automotive company's floor. Maybe we can see that in pharma, maybe 5 years down the line. Nobody knows.
Tesla can do the maintenance of the car sitting in US for a car in India.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So great. So thank you very much. We are really enjoying. I'll go to Mr. Adrish, who's our life sciences reward consultant, and take his view on the next HR, or I would say talent wave in the life science industry very quickly. Then I'll go to Sahil for ESG, and then we can call it for open the house for question answer. Yeah, very quickly, Adrish, to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Karan. And taking a cue from what Rajesh sir just said, okay, about the Tesla example. So a very recent discussion that we were having with a pharmaceutical giant, an MNC based out of Europe, they're talking about something called evolutive vaccine manufacturing, which means they're taking an assembly line approach and they're trying to change over the products over the assembly line, the way the car models and change in automobile industry. So that's how in the last 2 years, this crisis, we have seen many industries, best practices, benchmarks coming into life sciences. Every industry has something to share with pharma. Somebody will come and say, you can do this in supply chain. Somebody will come and say, with data sciences, data analysis, you can speed up the novel NDD process. You can speed up the approvals. So everybody has contributed to life sciences space in the last 2 years. And that is what is both creating competitive advantage and complexity for all the leaders. How do you create that ecosystem where the skills, with the different skills of the kind of people that you are hiring are nurtured and they groom to the next level? You can hire people as we understand, but you cannot retain them if that ecosystem is not there. So we are seeing our clients, we are seeing our partners coming to us and doing benchmarking, not just about the compensation part, but the benefits that are there, the career growth that are there, prospects that are there, what kind of title should be given, what kind of team structures. So agile team structures, which are not heard of in pharma, are being structured, are now being put into pharma. Agility was like 7 years in pharma. Now it is down to 2 years when you talk about products. So things have completely catapulted in the last 2 years, and we are looking at not just compensation, we are also looking at benefits. So when Rajesh sir or Sachin sir says that we have people who are coming to the sites and manufacturing plants or going to the market, and we have set of people, talent which is sitting at home and working. So how do you give the same sense of benefits to these employees? Because the cafeterias, the coffee machines, the gymnasiums are no more working for all the population right now. So you have a mix of hardwired benefits and you have a mix of experiential benefits. So these are the new trends in talent retention, talent attraction, which we are seeing. And an important parameter which has come to the fore is life sciences companies are not comparing themselves only with the life sciences companies anymore. So they are comparing themselves to Googles and Facebooks and Amazons and Netflixes of the world, because they're hiring talent from all these organizations. They're also talking about automobile industry. They're talking about even financial services for that matter. They're taking talent from everywhere and anywhere, and that's how they are growing much faster in their maturity of talent processes, people processes, and how do they retain and develop talent. So that is what we have seen, and happy to answer any more questions.
Okay, thanks. So I guess we have a question from a client, from an attendee, from Mr. Jolly. So can you put him on spotlight, Niladri? This is regarding ESG. And I will request Sahil to please answer that question. So over to you, sir. Can you hear us? Yes, sir. So you are on mute, sir.
Sorry, Karan.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So since the S factors in the ESG, considering of the people and the relationships, right from the customer satisfactions to the employee engagement, from the community relationships to the human rights, plays an immense importance in the life sciences industry. So my question is that what kind of an initiatives the life sciences company have taken into the considerations to demonstrate their commitments towards managing this social factor?
Yeah. So Sahil, can you answer that question? Because Sahil is our ESG influencer and leading the ESG initiative in India. Yeah.
Thank you, Karan, and thank you, Jolly sir. I think that's a very pertinent question. In fact, one of the points that Rajesh sir mentioned in his comments was that when the pandemic started, the safety of the employees was their key priority. So I guess it all stems from that in today's times, when organizations are really looking at their commitment, there are three key priorities, as we can see: people, planet, and profit. So people obviously comes out, as one of the key priorities for all organizations. And as you rightly put up, the S factor plays a very strong role when you talk about having a very sustainable future for the organization. So some of the very interesting initiatives that we've seen in the life sciences industry as far as the social commitment is concerned. So one, from an employee perspective, we've seen that there is increased amount of focus on bringing inclusion and diversity in the organization. So we are seeing that organizations are encouraging people from different backgrounds, different cultures to come together, blend, and start sharing knowledge and bring in the best practices. The other element is obviously to, I think, and this was touched upon by the other speakers, that this is an industry which is largely driven by talent. So the development and retention of the talent and grooming of the talent is a very key focus area for the organization. Employee health and safety, I think that goes without saying, but it's now gone beyond physical health and safety. Now it is extended towards mental health and well-being as well. Besides that, I think from moving on from the employees, looking at the community side, I think that's another area of key focus. And there, two broad initiatives that we certainly see. One is safety of the product. So obviously, pharmaceutical products, the product safety is very crucial. So a lot of investment is being done to ensure that there are least amount of risks or side effects being experienced by the people who are consuming the drugs. And another area that we saw during the last pandemic, and I think historically also we've seen that the life sciences companies have been investing extensively in corporate social responsibility. So like, for instance, during the pandemic, we've seen that a lot of medical facilities were set up, special sanitation facilities were introduced. Also, free medicines were distributed. There were sanitizers, PPE kits, a lot of medical devices that were also circulated by the organization. So the life sciences industry, this is an area, S, I think amongst ESG, E and G are certainly important, but S is indeed very important from the core focus area of the industry.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sahil. So with this, it's 5:01, and we are 1 minute over our seminar. But I would say If you have any question, we are still open for 1 or 2 minutes, or you can pose and we can reply you offline. But thank you all for coming and attending this webinar. We had more than 140 attendees in the webinar. And I would especially like to thank our panel speaker, Mr. Rajesh Parab, Mr. Sachin Darab, and Mr. Ujjwal Gupta for coming and, really talking about your experience of your organization and BCP supply chain. So thank you all. I would say it was a great session and many learning and key takeaway points. Thank you.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you, team. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.